Today I'm going to rank all 4 films in the RoboCop franchise, from worst to best. I just recently put out the evolution of RoboCop on my main channel, which goes through the movies as well as the TV shows, which I will probably also rank at some point. I know a lot of people think this franchise is dead or a poor shadow of what it used to stand for, but I'm not gonna let anyone's opinion change my own. So without any further ado, let's get to the rankings. I'd also love to see your ranking in the comments or just your favorite film in the series. So let's go. Before I take a look at my rankings, let's see what my Twitter followers considered their favorite RoboCop film. And number 1 was the original RoboCop with over 71% of the vote, and then the 2014 remake with 18% of the vote, and then RoboCop 2 with nearly 10% of the vote. And RoboCop 3 actually got 0%, which has never actually happened before with one of my polls, funnily enough. So let's see how my own rankings stack up against what Twitter thought. Coming in last place for me is the most recent RoboCop film, the 2014 reboot. Now, when taken on its own, it's an okay but generic action film, although when compared to the original film, it really just doesn't stack up for me. Despite spending much more time with Murphy's family, I somehow feel way less sympathetic for everything he's going through. Maybe it's because every actor feels like they're just on autopilot, but it's just not great. Furthermore, the commentary on the Iraq War at the time and the drone attacks is a good addition, as the original is full of commentary on the Cold War and the media, but it comes across as too separate from the main film, and Samuel Jackson is so over the top he probably belongs in a different movie altogether. Also, Gary Oldman seems to be constantly yelling when he isn't just giving the audience information about the suit. So all in all, not a horrible film, but just not a great RoboCop film. So I'll probably get some flack for having this above the remake, but for me, RoboCop 3 has just a little more what I look for in a RoboCop movie. Much of it is helped by how it gets to still play in the same universe that Paul Verhoeven created with the original film, although a much more toned down version of it. Returning characters include Sergeant Reed and RoboCop's partner Ann Lewis, which both help to make this feel like a continuation of the first 2 films, and RoboCop himself also returns, although he's now played by Robert John Burke instead of Peter Weller, who you may know Burke from the Stephen King adaptation of Thinner, which is the only thing I can place him in other than RoboCop 3. Burke does a pretty good job in the role, but I feel like his voice comes off as too robotic, although I think his movements in the suit are pretty good. Not quite as good as Peter Weller's, but still pretty good. The plot itself is about families being forced from their homes by OCP, and RoboCop teams up with a ragtag team to help take them down. And by all means this plot is fine, it just tones things down way too much. Like RoboCop gets a jetpack, but he barely does anything with it, and instead of being a part of the final battle between 2 robotic samurai, he instead falls over and then just flies away. But even still, while this film is much messier than the reboot, for me it just comes in a little bit above it. Now, compared to the last 2 entries in this list, this one is far above it. So coming in at number 2 is RoboCop 2. Now, the best word to describe this movie is probably disjointed. It has a lot of different plots going on which all accumulate in RoboCop facing off against another bigger RoboCop model. There's a plot about policemen going on strike, a plot about making the original RoboCop more child-friendly, a plot about RoboCop taking down a drug gang, and a plot about OCP making a new RoboCop model. Now, what makes this more or less work is the direction by Irvin Kershner, best known for directing The Empire Strikes Back. He seems to pull it all together and make the film feel comprehensible. Peter Weller also gets a little bit more in this film emotionally, especially when he talks with his wife as RoboCop, and the world of Detroit feels much more heightened and more neon colored than the first film. RoboCop himself has a more blue-tinted look to fit in with these more heightened surroundings. The main bad guy in the film, Kane, is played competently by Tom Noonan, who also played the lead bad guy in the first Hannibal Lecter movie, Manhunter, and played Frankenstein's monster in The Monster Squad, although arguably OCP itself is actually the main evil in this movie. Whereas in the first film they seem to be a little bit more ambivalent with a few bad apples, RoboCop 2 makes it more clear that OCP is actually a more cartoonish evil corporation, so while it may be a little more violent than the first film and lacks some of the commentary of the original, it still is a great sci-fi action flick and a worthy sequel to the first film. But of course, coming in first place, could it be any other film, is the amazing original. From everything I've read about the making of this movie, nothing seemed to go easy, but you wouldn't be able to guess that by how smooth the film flows from point A to point B. The movie is basically a Western revenge film with a sci-fi cyberpunk twist, with commentary on the Cold War thrown in as well. On top of this, the film is basically about a man who gets resurrected as a machine and then has to find his humanity once more. It's also super violent, and I saw this film when I was probably way too young, maybe 10 years old, and while it was probably the edited TV version, it's still super violent. The design department also nailed RoboCop's suit. While it's maybe a little clunky, it still comes off as more realistic than the remake, especially thanks to the movements that Peter Weller creates while wearing the suit. Also, the ending few moments of the film always leave a huge smile on my face. It's somehow both heartwarming and extremely violent, so obviously the 1987 classic is my favorite RoboCop film, and I'd argue, a nearly perfect movie. Thanks for watching. What's your RoboCop film ranking? And shout out to the patrons, especially Bustos and Mr. D-Lots, for joining recently. Check out the evolution of RoboCop animation linked in the description, and I'll tell you something later.